Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really. So, speedu camera. Nani kore? Forza Royalty rewards. Seems I literally played every single Forza Horizon game that came before. Sugoi. Natsukashi. As you can see and hear, I'm more than ready for the new Forza Horizon 6. But the big question, is my PC also ready? Tashi kamete yo! Ikuzo! A big shout out to my wife's Japanese YouTube channel and their followers who subscribe to my channel, helping me to get over 1000 subscribers. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. If you want to spy on my kids and occasionally see me wear pajamas, then go check it out. Link in the description below. What? You've been gifted 20 super wheel spins? Okay, this is Forza Horizon 5, and before we dive into 6, a quick reminder that Horizon 5 already had some ray tracing, but it was only ray-traced car reflections, and then only screen-spaced ambient occlusion or screen-spaced reflections. Now coming into Forza Horizon 6, the graphics settings has the usual presets, but now also High+RT, Ultra+RT and Extreme+RT. It's the preset I will use for most of my benchmarks, even though there is one more setting where you can push the car reflection quality from Ultra to Extreme. And what's new is that now we have ray-traced global illumination and ray-traced reflections, in addition to their screen-spaced variants. And those are the settings that you need to look out for if you need some optimization or if you have a GPU with only 8GB of VRAM. Now, I played Forza Horizon 5 on my RTX 3080 with completely maxed out settings at 1440p Ultrawide, no DLSS upscaling whatsoever, and it was completely fine. Forza Horizon 6 now is still a really well optimized game, but even on the 5080 now I need to consider some form of upscaling and even frame generation to give me an optimal experience on my system. Now onto the benchmarks, and for those I always try to find a scene that represents the worst case scenario in terms of graphical complexity, and I think very early on when we arrive in Tokyo for the first time and are thrown into our first road race, that's a really good sequence. It's at night and it's rainy, so lots of light sources bouncing around the scene as well as the reflections from the puddles on the street. As always, I start off with DLAA and no additional overclock on my GPU, stock settings. And with all that ray tracing going on, it's not a huge surprise that my average FPS is just slightly below 50. Maybe not quite high enough to whack frame gen on top of that. But to put that in perspective, that's still 20 FPS more than I had in Pragmata with maxed out path tracing and DLAA. Now I will apply my stable overclock settings of plus 3000 on the MEM. Then on the core, plus 360 is pushing it a bit in some ray trace scenarios, but whether it's now 350 or 340 doesn't really make any difference. And then 125% on the power limit. This is my gigabyte gaming OC. Yeah? Most other GPUs don't have that high power limit. And now with DLAA and that overclock, I'm getting an average FPS of 54.2. That's an increase of around 9.7%, which is about to be expected on the RTX 5080. And to put that in perspective, in Forza Horizon 5, at DLAA and maxed out settings, you have about double the average frame rate. If I remember correctly, that Hot Wheels DLC was a bit more demanding than the base game. Up next, we have DLSS Quality. First, again without that manual overclock, average FPS now jumped above that magical 60 FPS threshold at 68.3, about a 38% increase versus DLAA. When I turn my overclock profile back on, that's where things start to get interesting, because now I can only observe an around 2 to 3% boost versus stock settings, and if we take a closer look at my GPU utilization, now we can see that it's dropped below 90%. Hence, I've now started to become CPU bottlenecked on my older Ryzen 9 5900X, and already this is no longer a valid GPU benchmark. Therefore, it's pretty obvious that now dropping down to DLSS Balanced will not give me any noticeable benefit. The average FPS of 71.9 is a measly increase of 2.4% versus DLSS Quality, and now DLSS super sampling no longer scales as it should on my CPU bottlenecked system. So even though it appears that my GPU overclock led to a CPU bottleneck, I will still leave that overclock on for the remainder of my benchmarks, because now I will use DLSS frame generation, and that requires a little bit of a performance overhead. At DLSS Quality and frame generation 2x, I have now an average FPS of 128.8, and this is usually the setting that I consider my sweet spot in many modern AAA games on my system. Also worth noting that I have an average PC latency of 58.4 milliseconds. It's not that low actually, but still totally playable. I could of course also consider DLAA with frame gen, but I think in this game I prefer a higher FPS that is closer to my monitor refresh rate of 144 Hz, so I will probably stick with DLSS Quality and frame gen 2x for my playthrough. If you were looking at my GPU utilization just now and are saying, wait a minute, now you're well above 95% again, make no mistake, I'm probably still CPU bottlenecked. But now frame generation is likely to hide such a bottleneck because I've given my GPU something else to do. Frame gen does not eliminate CPU bottlenecks. Do check out my separate video on this topic for more insight. Let's have a quick look at the numbers for multi-frame generation. At 3x I could consider maxing out a 180 Hz monitor with an average FPS of 180.9. Interestingly, the average PC latency went down slightly to 56.3 milliseconds, maybe within the margin of error. And then with multi-frame generation 4x, we're getting a 229.2 average FPS, so maybe a good option for anyone with a 240 Hz monitor. Average PC latency again 56 milliseconds, so I would say the good news at least is that the cost of frame gen, whether it be 2x, 3x or 4x, is roughly the same. But if your focus in this game were the competitive PvP modes, then you'd probably not consider frame gen at all. Maybe some wouldn't even consider the excessive use of ray tracing, because if they believe, this is all an Nvidia marketing scam, same as with frame gen, no fake frames, no thank you. Alright, let's turn off ray tracing entirely, but stick to the extreme preset. Then our average FPS goes up to nearly 100 without frame gen, and now I know what the cost of ray tracing is on this system, 40%. But it's probably worth having a bit of ray tracing, and we're not going to see the benefits of the extreme settings all that well, right? Then we're going to go maybe Ultra+RT, and then I end up with an average FPS of 85.8. And that is an increase of 22.2% versus the Extreme+RT preset. And even though I was already apparently CPU bottlenecked with DLSS Quality and maxed out settings, I can still gain quite a lot of additional FPS by doing that. Even when I drop down further to the High+RT preset, then I still get an even higher average FPS of 110.5. Just bear in mind that all of these figures are not accurate, because we are CPU bottlenecked here in all of these scenarios. Last but not least, I wanted to see what difference it makes setting the car reflection quality from Ultra to Extreme, and the cost of that is only 1.6%. So in light of my CPU bottlenecks, I might as well go all in with maxed out settings. In conclusion, and in my opinion, the best setting on this system is DLSS Quality, everything maxed out, and frame generation 2x, assuming that we are not targeting anything more than 144 FPS. To wrap up, let's circle back to my original question, is my PC ready for Forza Horizon 6? Me personally, since I focus mainly on single player content, yeah, but if I was really serious about online multiplayer PvP stuff and trying to become one of the top players in the world, then I might need a new CPU to avoid any micro stutters with slightly worse 1% lows, and also not being able to achieve these ultra high frame rates. What do I think about the game? What can I say? I'm a big fan of the franchise, I love it. I would say enough time has passed since the last game. Obviously coming back from a long day's work and after having put the kids to bed, looking at all the icons on the map. There's a tendency that this can turn into a second job. And in essence, it's still the same job that I've already done 5 times before. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Does this game look better than Forza Horizon 5? Sure. But the thing is, you look at this now in 2026, and this is exactly how you remember Forza Horizon 5 from 5 years ago, right? And with that, I'll stop rambling. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of stuff, and I see you in the next video. Ciao, mata ne!